Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures. It's Friday, and it's the last Friday of this school year, at least when I recorded this, which means it's time for yet another obscurity in literature. And today I bring to you a book that has grown on me quite over the years, and that is Tor, a Prehistoric Odyssey by none other than the quite prolific and legendary Joe Kubert. So Joe Kubert and Tor, growing up for me, meant the caveman looking dude in the ads for learning how to draw for the Kubert School of Cartooning. Now, I know his sons, Adam and Andy, were big hotshot artists at the time when I was really into comics, and I was like, oh yeah, they're so awesome, they're extreme. And then I'd look at their dad stuff and I'd be like, why are there so many squiggly lines all over everything? And that's just, I think my age at the time showing very juvenile and just not really clicking and getting his work at the time. Eventually, I would pick up some of the DC archives, and I don't know when things started to click with Kubert Sr. I know he'd been quite a prolific artist since like the late 40s, early 50s, not only drawing for DC, but quite a few of the independents as well. There's some stuff that Fantagraphics, I believe, put out in archival book, much like the Steve Ditko series. But I'm not sure when it finally clicked. I want to say it was around the time that I stumbled upon the Epic Comics release of Tor. Now, this is a regular-sized book. It's not one of those fancy, super giant prestige ones. And DC actually did put out a set of Tor archives, which were much larger and had these really strange covers. And I have two of the three, and I don't know where they are. I've been searching. I came across the first one, but the first one I thought was kind of dull and boring. We'll save it for another day with the hopes that I find the third book, because the third book is the one that had the Epic miniseries when he was doing it on his own under the Epic imprint at Marvel. And that was the one I think that finally cemented not only his style and just the fact that Kubert was a really, really awesome storyteller. And from there, I kind of dove into more of his work. I read a bunch of the Enemy Ace stories that he wrote. I did check out Hawkman, but if you haven't noticed, I'm not the biggest superhero fan. Yeah, there's some cool stuff, and I've read plenty of superhero books over the years, but I think the lure and appeal of something different, something exotic, and something much more out of the ordinary is what's always appealed to me. Plus, as you see, as soon as you open it up, monsters. That seals the deal every time for me. And that was probably one of the things that really stood out about the Epic version. And there are some similarities in this one. Funny enough, my son, one time when we were at the comic shop, one of the few times I ever go to a comic shop, they had a bunch of, quarter books or something like that, and he was really little, and he stumbled upon this, and I didn't even know it existed at the time. So I know he still has somewhere squirreled away actual floppy editions of this original series, the Prehistoric Odyssey. I had to double check that. So I'll be honest, the story itself isn't the most complex. It's engaging, it's interesting, and it's entertaining. I've always been a fan of these prehistoric style stories, or anything where we have, something set outside of the typical modern world. And again, right off the bat, we've already got monstery stuff. And also, you'll notice that we have a brooding, loinclothed, long-haired hero throughout this story. And if you're not familiar, Kubert was actually one of the big movers and shakers for DC's Tarzan book in the 70s, and put out a pretty influential graphic novel of his own at the time. I'm not sure who did the colors. I'm kind of curious. I don't think Kubert himself did. Does it say? Okay, Pete Carlson. The name doesn't ring a bell, but that's okay. I think he's done an admirable job. And this is obviously post-computer coloring. Very nice, different gradients being used everywhere. And so we have Tor set off on his epic journey, comes across a little friend that he saves and rescues. And that kind of is an ongoing theme throughout the story, and there are some very interesting things that he encounters along the way. and actually a couple nods and throwbacks to earlier Tor stories. Like I said, the epic one and the original independent published ones that he did, which are in those Tor archives as well. I'm not going to spoil too much about what's going on here. We end up having these weird, flabby, Morlock-type monsters, for lack of a better word, show up to harangue Tor and his woman. And surprisingly, considering the lack of clothing and tons of violence, I thought it's pretty subdued. And I'm trying to remember if that was the case with the older book. I don't remember. We have a lot of proto-human, post-ape, missing link type tribes people in here, explaining the story as well that he meets throughout it. And again, if you're familiar with Kubert's Tarzan run, you know, a lot of familiar notes getting hit. That's another one. I thought I had most of the Kubert archives. I was on like a Tarzan kick in the early 2000s and picked up, I've got like the Russ Manning ones, which are really gorgeous looking, especially if you dig his clean art style, and some of those Jesse Marsh ones, for as primitive and simplistic as his work can look at times, it's actually really cool. We could take a look at those some other time. And this is like, look, this is like pure Tarzan looking art. I think he was in like the Lost City with the one priestess. Gosh, what were they called? With the tails? I don't remember. It's been a while since I read a Tarzan book. Like I said, it was the early 2000s. It's been a good 15, 20 years probably since I flipped through those. I should dig those out. Maybe we'll do a special on Tarzan books one of these days. But yeah, the man definitely knew his monkey people. And the other interesting thing is, while this book is a bit wordy for, you know, a bunch of cavemen and, you know, prehistoric peoples, it actually is completely devoid of dialogue and word balloons, if you haven't noticed. Obviously, there is a story, and the characters, and that's something that they actually touch upon, which I found interesting, was that, you know, you have the characters figuring out how to converse with each other, either writing in the dirt, with hand motions, things like that. I found that amusing and entertaining. Recollections of what happens earlier, because I'm skipping over parts of it. I want to say it was like a 6 or 7 issue, maybe even more limited series that he was doing. But I'm going to jump to the end. I don't want to show you what happens. When we get to the last page, and we have them going through these ice caves, and the promise of future stories, because the end for now. Sadly, as far as I know, there were no others, and that was a big disappointment for me. I know I started digging out some of the other books that Kubert has published, and I mean, there is no denying the man was an impressive artist. Personally, I love going through these old sketch pages. I really feel that we should see more of this kind of stuff. I mean, as a poorly aspiring comic artist, as a young teen, you know, right when Image was blowing up, this kind of stuff would have been invaluable to me at the time. I may not be the greatest artist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do like to think that I can appreciate a good, solid layout. And that is one thing that Kubert delivers on. And there's a little bit about him in the back, and some of the works that he's done. I know Fax to from Sarajevo was a big one that earned him a bunch of awards. I don't remember if I read that or not. He's done quite a few different books, so definitely something to take a look at if you're interested, especially if you dig these prehistoric type stories. Can't complain about the quality of art here. Like I said, hopefully I will try to dig out some of those other books. If you dig these types of stories, our hero is nobody special. I mean, he doesn't have any superpowers or anything like that. He's just an ordinary guy, at least compared to a lot of his surroundings. So, fun book. Just disappointing in the fact that we never got any more, unfortunately. But at least we are blessed with this and those archives for as obscure and as difficult as they were to track down the first time around. I'm going to have to get back to looking for them. So, with that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we will see you back here soon. Bye-bye.